we have to remember a lot of these people are very smart. You mentioned, Breonna Joy Gray, very smart person, and she's done a lot of great things. But I think it's also difficult for people to come to terms with what we're talking about. It's like, okay, wow, this is the point of no return. We got to cross that Rubicon. For many, people are afraid.
Well,
yes, the discussion's over, but they let their fear of the unknown overtake their rational, critical thinking. And
also,
go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, at the end of the day, look, we like Breonna. We don't want to beat up on Breonna, but at the end of the day, man, she's a Harvard lawyer. She's an insider. She had a high-ranking position on a serious presidential campaign. She doesn't want to be a Sada Shakur, man. Like, she's afraid she's afraid of that. She's afraid of being seen that way, just like Bernie was, right? He doesn't want to be Ralph Nader, right? That explains everything you need to know about every choice Bernie made.
I think psychologically too, there's something where people who have achieved, such things, people who are high-paying lawyers, professional class people, have a sense of what is at stake for them. We talked about this last time we were on your guys' show. But professional class people don't know despair because they don't feel it. And they are, in a way, more threatened by it because it's so foreign to them. To not have a plan, to not see what you're going to do next is something they are just not familiar with because they've always had a way forward. They've always known what tomorrow brings. A lot of working class people know the feeling of despair, desperation, and uncertainty. They are very familiar with those feelings. Therefore, they're not as threatened by them. Therefore, when we say we don't know what's next and we are okay to be honest about that, we can do that. We can say that, and our audience can actually absorb that and deal with that and handle that. The bad faith audience cannot. Kyle's audience cannot. Crystal's audience cannot. They need a plan because that's the world they live in. They live in a world where they know what tomorrow brings, whereas a lot of working class people don't. And that, I think, psychologically is a big difference. And it's why they just cannot let go of the idea that we need a primary. We need a challenge. We need to put these ideas on the table and move the ball forward. Even if that is a complete illusion, a complete fantasy, they cannot divorce themselves from it.
Let's listen.
But that's not democracy to say that a president anyone challenging a president can't get a hearing, can't be seen, has to be disappeared. So that tells you how the system really works. But it's very unfortunate. I think it would be a good thing for him to have to face them on the debate stage, but that is something that they see as being too dangerous, and that's why it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree that it would be an incredibly
good thing for him
to have to face those.
That's not why. He could be completely sharp. They're not. What's in it for them? They don't have to do it. They're not going to do it. And to be fair, as Keaton pointed out on the show the other night, they don't normally do this with an incumbent president in either party. I mean, conventionally, you could definitely make the argument, what's up with that? Like, why don't you? But they don't. It's not like they're making an exception this time.
I think in many ways, just people want to, again, just make something so that there's this, I guess, what's a dopamine hit? So that they feel like they're relevant. Like they could put some meaning in their lives.
Right.
Look, when you two were on my show, you were talking about these activists and these people who were protesting Trump. It gives purpose to their lives. Same thing with people wanting to see these primaries. Like, oh, maybe we could take on the establishment. It gives purpose to their lives. And someone like Breonna Joy Gray, as again everyone mentioned here before, she doesn't know the struggle of an uncertain future. Whereas many people in the live stream audiences, I know RBN, Dissidence, HardLens, we've seen the stories where people say, hey, I'm right now struggling to take care of my family. I'm struggling right now with work. I'm struggling right now to make ends meet, or I've been unemployed for X amount of months. There is an atmosphere, an environment of fear that the people who are in the ivory towers have no goddamn clue what's going on. And so
Yeah.
they try and create this something to maybe fool the people again. Now, Americans, I think, are waking up, not as fast as I or any of us would like to see them do that. But it's very difficult for people to come to terms of what do we do next, because these same people who promote primaries or saying we got to resist Trump are the same individuals that live in a fantasy world where, oh, I can make a difference. I could be a resistance fighter. I could be like the people of an antiquity. But the thing is, the people who were the radicals were in the small minority, okay? The people who were abolitionists were radical. To say that you wanted to free the slaves back in the day before the Civil War, that was considered radical, and people would probably shoot you for that. That one infamous photo in Germany where everyone's giving the Zig Heil and that dude with his arms crossed like that, that took a lot of courage. A lot of people can't do that. They can't be a radical. They could say, oh, if I was born in the Civil War era, I would have been the good one and freed the slaves in the South. Or I would have helped the Jews escape the Nazis. No, you wouldn't. None of these people would. They're not real in their commentary of thinking they could bring in a real future. We got to go into our despair. We got to realize that it's going to get worse, and we have to build that infrastructure that's different than what we're used to seeing in mainstream media and current politics, because it's not working.
Well, this is the irony. If you're conforming that much to the narratives of your time, it very strongly suggests that you would have been a Nazi. You would have been supported. You would have been a conformist in whatever age you lived in, because you're a sheep now. What makes you think you wouldn't have been a sheep then? Like, if you were gonna be a radical then, you'd be a radical now. If you're not a radical now, you wouldn't have been a radical then. So not being a radical then being a Nazi, being a slave owner. That's who you would have
It's
been.
like because the stuff of the past are now commonplace, and they feel comfortable with now the past. What would be radical is now just the status quo, so they feel comfortable with saying, "Oh, I would have been that." It's completely a joke. But let's get through some more of this video, gentlemen. Let me know when you want to stop.
Those two and others that might enter in a debate. I think it would be great if there were a movement of folks calling for such a thing, that there should be some consequences politically for the Democratic Party, basically shutting down the democratic process on the left side of the aisle. It does seem to me like there's a tension between a sort of unwillingness for certain leftists to get behind. I mean, there's I think a legitimate apprehension about the legitimacy of these candidates and the extent to which they're going to ultimately shepherd you back into the Democratic Party, and whether or not they are really willing to stick the landing, and how strong their leftist bona fides are. I think all of those are legitimate questions to put to any candidate, but there's a tension, I think, between the left not wanting to get burned again, like the way many people felt burned by Bernie, and their ability to create a pressure campaign to challenge the Democratic Party to allow these figures on the debate stage. It almost feels like you have to be invested somewhat in at least the relevancy of these candidacies. The fact that they're to the left of Biden on some issues, to really want to push for a campaign that could expose the Democratic Party for its anti-democratic actions in this moment. But I'm very skeptical that there will be any accountability for the Democratic Party, because who would mount such a campaign but the left? And the left.
You just figured that out, huh?
Well, here she says, "Who would mount that campaign but the left?" Can we just hear the rest of that sentence? I'm interested.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, let's let me go back to get the full context. 10 seconds, and then we can play it.
I mean, there's I think a legitimate apprehension about the legitimacy of these candidates and the extent to which they're going to ultimately shepherd you back into the Democratic Party, and whether or not they are really willing to stick the landing, and how strong their leftist bona fides are. I think all of those are legitimate questions to put to any candidate, but there's a tension, I think, between the left not wanting to get burned again, like the way many people felt burned by Bernie, and their ability to create a pressure campaign to challenge the Democratic Party to allow these figures on the debate stage. It almost feels like you have to be invested somewhat in at least the relevancy of these candidacies. The fact that they're to the left of Biden on some issues.
God damn it!
Really
No.
Push for a campaign.
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to pause or interrupt, but look, I mean, we all thought that Bernie could do it in 2016 and 2020, and it didn't work. And then you had the sycophants carrying water, like, oh, if we hold Hillary Clinton's feet to the fire, she'll move left. We hold Biden's feet to the fire, they'll move left.
Time.
AOC said, hey, he's exceeding expectations. Bernie said, hey, that's my good friend Joe. Everyone giving the establishment a pass. It's not going to goddamn work because they don't care. They never did. They rigged primaries. In Illinois in 2020, I did an interview, that it was in regards towards election integrity and what was happening here towards Bernie Sanders' campaign in the 2020 primary. In Illinois, hey, we're heavyweight champions here of, lack of election integrity. Yeah. And those votes somehow disappeared. And that's just only one example here in Illinois. There are countless examples in 2016 and 2020 where, again, people were waiting 8 hours, 10 hours, a whole goddamn day just to goddamn vote. So the thing is, no, Brianna, no one wants to go through it. It's not relevant because if if RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson are not going to be vocal about election fraud, not going to be vocal about how the DNC screws and scams over these candidacies, not going to address the fact that the DNC has super delegates, that they're wasting everyone's goddamn time. And if you're going to be throwing in money to both of these candidates and they're not going to fight against Biden, I'm sorry, you're a sucker. I'm so sorry. But you're a victim in an abusive relationship. So Gen Z, heads up, they're going to screw you over again because they made it very clear. The DNC has an agenda. So no, we can acknowledge it. Yes, we could talk about it, but I'm not going to sit here on my show and say, we got to vote for Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. for this primary and it's going to happen. No, because people have been lied to. People have spent time, effort, energy, money, sacrificed time with their friends and family, and so much more, gave up careers just to help out Bernie. And what did he do? He crafted people's hats. That's what he did. That's what he goddamn did.
Anybody else want to craft their hat?
I'll just briefly, what the hell makes anyone think these people are going to be in the race in February? Nobody's going to give money to these people. Nobody's going to give money to these people. Hey, it's very easy to get on your keyboard and bitch at us when we're doing our show in the comment section. RFK is saying the stuff about Ukraine. Yeah, so are we, man. Okay, how about I run for president? Are you gonna send me money?
Right.
Okay, I say lots of stuff that you probably like. Doesn't mean I can actually run for president successfully. They're not even going to be in the race in all likelihood by the time you have a primary. And you know what? Marianne, RFK, those motherfuckers are both rich. They believe in it so much, let them pay for it. Let them pay for it. If they're on the ballot, by the time it gets to your town, go ahead, vote for them. Just don't waste your time and your money. Let them self-fund if they believe in it so much.
All right, so let's listen some more. I'll play probably a minute and a half and then stop it and then move it to the. It's a gradual thing I'm trying to get here. I think there's 2 more points, so let's listen because Margaret Kimberly has to get a little. Well, I won't describe it, but let's listen.
Campaign that could expose the Democratic Party for its anti-democratic actions in this moment, but I'm very skeptical that there will be any accountability for the Democratic Party because who would mount such a campaign but the left? And the left seems to be indifferent to the whole project. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think you're right. But if people were ready to make demands, it could be very useful for Biden to be challenged if people weren't afraid. I think this, I was referring to Black voters, but I think it's true. I think it's especially true of Black voters who are committed to keeping Republicans out of office. But I think it's true for most Democrats. At the end of the day, their biggest fear is of a Republican victory, and they can very easily be wooed into supporting, especially an incumbent, as is the case with Biden. If people had a little more courage, it could be useful for Kennedy and Williamson to be running. It could put pressure on Biden. But if people are going to, get weak at the end of the day and let him off the hook.
She's referring to the candidate here. If you didn't see that switch, she's referring to if they're going to be weak at the end of the primary.
People had a little more courage. It could be useful for Kennedy and Williamson to be running. It could put pressure on Biden. But if people are going to, get weak at the end of the day and let him off the hook and then decide they have to vote for him no matter what, then it's all for naught. And that's the shame.
See, bad faith, Bree thought she had a soundbite right there. She thought she had a soundbite until Margaret Kimberly doubled back and said, hold on. Yeah, it could be useful. But it's only useful if the candidate is willing to have a backbone. That's the only way that this is going to be useful. So it could, Bree. And there's people, somebody on her, anytime she has a guest and that guest knows her stance and they know that they're far radical to her, they try to dress it up for them. And this is what Margaret Kimberly is doing. She's trying to say, yes, I guess it could be useful, but it would require this, and this. Yeah. And I'm going to fast forward to another part as you guys chime in. I can't see you, but one of you wanted to chime in. Go ahead.
Well, the thing is, when we look at the idea of a candidate being brave, Bernie Sanders said numerous times to be brave. To quote that infamous line at the end of Bulworth, you either be a spirit or a ghost. All right. The thing is, Bernie Sanders chose to be a ghost. He was afraid of being recognized as the next Ralph Nader. If he had gone through and rode on to be a third party candidate, if he just gave a middle finger to Hillary Clinton and went all in for being third party, he would have been made into the greatest political villain in American history. But for those who are initiated, for those who know the truth, would have viewed him as somebody who stood by his principles and broke away from a corrupt Democratic Party. And the fact that Donald Trump even brought it up not only once in the 2016 primary, but even in the 2020 primary, like, hey, Bernie, they're screwing you over. Trump more or less tweeted that stuff out, like, hey, look what they're doing to Bernie. And of course, Trump only cares about his ego, but he brought it up. And the fact that a rival candidate of another party addresses the fact that your primary is rigged and they're screwing you over says a lot about Bernie Sanders' character. And that is, he knew it. Bernie Sanders didn't believe in his movement because he wasn't brave enough to believe in his movement. He didn't believe in his supporters because he didn't believe in his supporters. And he wasn't brave enough to believe in his ideas either. He talks a good game. He tweets it out. And that's it. I will thank him forever for inspiring me to do HardLens Media, Daniel and I, to do this show. But that's it. He inspired others to be better, but he doesn't believe in his messaging, and he doesn't believe in any of the people. He didn't believe in any of the work that we've done for him. And so the thing is, RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson, I like to think that you're brave, but I don't think you're going to really follow through with it.
Well, they're telling you they're not. If they were going to follow through, they would tell you right now, right? Because look at all the support they're leaving on the table by not promising to leave the Democratic Party. Well, because the normie Dems are not going to back them, so that's out of the question. So you're looking to the left. So how many of the left are going to back you after what we went through with Bernie? So the fact that they will not just straight out tell you, oh, yeah, no, I'm going all the way. I'm going independent. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to use the apparatus of the Democratic Party for as long as I can ride it, and then I'm running independent. Why wouldn't they do that? They're telling you from the beginning that this ends with them telling you must vote for Joe Biden because the alternative is, I didn't want to lose the liberals I was talking to today by saying this because they brought up, well, but what about the other guy? What about him? What about him? When the other guy was in, we weren't in Ukraine. It's not a good option, but that's not much of an argument at this point to me. Oh my God, well, you must because of the other person. Pick your poison. You got this poison with the one, you got this poison with the other. But you say that to a liberal, that's it. They're shut down at that point. you cannot say another word after that they're going to listen to.
Well, the thing is, I got two stories about in regards to talking to liberals in regards to Trump. People have turned him into this cartoon character, Hitler 2.0, when in fact we've had genocidal presidents that ordered the destruction of the Native American nations here. Trump, scumbag person, but he's not Hitler 2.0. We've had actual genocidal presidents before. And the thing is, I remember Daniel brought this story up a long time ago. He brought the name of Donald Trump he went to like a family gathering or a dinner party. I forget which one it was, but and this guest that was at his house just went into absolute panic mode like this, because as soon as Daniel said Trump, like, and that's what they did. And then when I went to like a dinner with friends, this one person who was I guess a friend of a friend, right? I mentioned Donald Trump during one of the conversations, and this person, well, she did this, like, please don't ever say that man's name again. It just starts like, yeah, like honestly, like it's almost like the way she was crying was almost as if I said all of the offensive swear words at once towards her. And that's how easily triggered people are by Trump, because they made him into this cartoon villain.